are ready for crew module closeout.
OCC, OVCC.
At OVCC.
Yes, sir. MS2 is aboard.
Copy MS2 at 1343.
And we have our 7 astronauts seated at breakfast. Ilan Ramon is there. He is the representative from the Israel Space Agency, a first-time flyer, as well as David Brown. William McCool, who will be our pilot on this mission. Our commander for this flight is Rick Husband. Laurel Clark, one of the 2 females on this mission. Mike Anderson, and of course Kalpana Chawla, rounding out the 7-member crew. This again was taken at the crew quarters. Astronauts have been awakened at different times. They're on 2 separate shifts on this mission to cover the 24 hours that we'll be doing scientific research. And our astronauts coming out now as they are making their way to the astronaut band. Commander Rick Husband, payload specialist Ilan Ramon, pilot William McCool, and mission specialist Michael Anderson, David Brown, Laurel Clark, and Kalpana Chawla. And we have a go for auto sequence start. Columbia's onboard computers have primary control of all the vehicle's critical functions. T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 15 seconds. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
Roger, roll, Columbia.
Columbia now rolling on to the proper azimuth for a 39-degree inclination to orbit. Shuttle in a heads-down, wings level position for the 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 30 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines beginning to throttle back in a 3-step fashion to 72% of rated performance, reducing the stress on the shuttle as it breaks through the sound barrier. Columbia already 2.5 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 4.5 miles in altitude. The main engines beginning to rev up to full throttle, 104% of rated performance.
Columbia, you send your go at throttle up. We copy, go at throttle up.
The throttle up call acknowledged by Commander Rick Husband, joined on the flight deck by pilot Willie McCool, flight engineer Kalpana Chawla, and mission specialist Dave Brown. Mission specialist Laurel Clark, payload commander Mike Anderson, and payload specialist Ilan Ramon seated down on the middeck. 1 minute, 26 seconds into the flight. Columbia 10 miles downrange, 13 miles in altitude, traveling at 1,800 miles an hour. It's away from solid rocket booster separation, everything looking good on board Columbia. Solid rocket booster separation confirmed. Guidance now converging. Columbia's onboard computers commanding the main engine nozzles to gently swivel, aiming the shuttle for a precise target in space for main engine cutoff.
This is indeed a tragic day for the NASA family, for the families of the astronauts who flew on STS-107, and likewise tragic for the nation. Immediately upon indication of a loss of communications on STS-107 at a little after 9 a.m. this morning, we began our contingency plan to preserve all the information relative to the flight activities. I immediately advised the President and the Secretary of Homeland Security, Secretary Tom Ridge, at the point after landing was due to have occurred at 9:16. Spoke to them very briefly thereafter to advise that we had lost contact with the shuttle orbiter Columbia and STS-107 crew. Thereafter, we have met with the family members of the astronauts who were here at Kennedy Space Center and are soon to be departing back to Johnston, to Houston. The President has called and spoken to them to express our deepest national regrets. We have assured them that we will begin the process immediately to recover their loved ones and understand the cause of this tragedy.
On February 1st, 2003, communication with Space Shuttle Columbia and her crew was lost.
Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
They were 16 minutes from home.
Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check. Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check.
Columbia was hardly a thing of beauty, except to those of us who loved and cared for her. She was often badmouthed for being a little heavy in the rear end, but many of us can relate to that. Many said she was old and past her prime. Still, she had only lived barely a quarter of her design life. Columbia had a great many missions ahead of her. She, along with the crew, had her life snuffed out in her prime. Just as her crew has, Columbia has left us quite a legacy. Hail Columbia.
Their mission was almost complete, and we lost them so close to home. The men and women of the Columbia had journeyed more than 6 million miles and were minutes away from arrival and reunion. The loss was sudden and terrible, and for their families, the grief is heavy. This cause of exploration and discovery is not an option we choose. It is a desire written in the human heart. We are that part of creation which seeks to understand all creation. We find the best among us, send them forth into unmapped darkness, and pray they will return. They go in peace for all mankind, and all mankind is in their debt.
What we did is we put together some shots of training that we wanted to show you at the beginning. Beginning with, this is our traditional get together and do the crew photo at the beginning of training. We have T-38s that we use for spaceflight readiness training, acrobatics, formation, instruments. We also have a virtual reality lab. Here, Jim Kelly is doing robotics training with Charlie and Wendy.
This is good because this gives us clearance to use.
All stop. Access to the remove.
Soichi's in one of our simulators doing training with the camera for the ET photo. Here he is in the neutral buoyancy lab for EVA training. Steve is doing emergency egress training in the launch and entry suit, and also some tile repair. We did some trips down to the Cape. You see Andy here doing some training on the inspection. He was our lead on the inspection. And Wendy was our lead on transfer. This is the MPLM and transfer training. Her and Charlie worked on that together during the flight. Charlie also worked on the inspection.
Seeing the crew with the STS-114 mission cake is Mission Specialist Wendy Lawrence, pilot Jim Kelly, astronaut Soichi Noguchi from JAXA, our commander Eileen Collins, mission specialist Andy Thomas, and Steve Robinson, along with Charlie Camarda. A happy tone for our launch today. I'll be headed off after a very brief lunch to the suit-up room, and they'll also get a weather briefing as to our conditions here at KSC, which are excellent today. We see our commander, Eileen Collins, now in the suit-up room. Here is our pilot, Jim Kelly. And across the room is flight engineer, mission specialist Steve Robinson. Here they are. Elevator doors opening at the 195-foot level. Eileen Collins now, our commander, preparing to board. Meanwhile, the Astrovan is leaving the pad. This is Mission Specialist 5, Charlie Camarda. He will sit in seat 7. That's the mid-deck right seat.
Go on 543.
OTC, CDNC.
CNC, go.
Can give you steps 545 and 546 complete. We're ready for GMT Delta adjust.
Copy. And DPS and ISL. ISL. DPS here. Step 547, GMT, MET adjustments. So copies. DPS copies.
As soon as Eileen has her communications equipment on.
OVCC. VCC, OTC. MS5 on board at this time. Copy, 1123 GMT.
That's confirmation that Charlie Camarda is now on board. Eileen Collins getting ready for her first initial comm check with the firing room. And Jim Kelly, as we saw, is coming up next.
OVCC, OTC. PLT on board at this time. Copy, 1131. OTC DPS. DPS, go. GMT and MT adjustment complete, ready for IMU platform positioning. B569 and GNC OTC. GNC. Copy that.
And we see Andy Thomas there being prepared for boarding as well.
NTD, CDR, com check.
CDR, this is NTD. I have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard, Eileen.
Thank you, Jeff. And you're loud and clear also.
Suichi Noguchi from Jackson now steps into the picture.
Houston, PLT, com check.
PLT, Houston, you are loud and clear. Good morning, Vegas.
Morning, Hawk, got you loud and clear as well. Ready to go. 589 complete, test size 0.
You can see the detail in which everyone is paying to all of the equipment on the crew members, the number of people that inspect that equipment. We want to make sure that absolutely nothing is wrong with it, and once we close the hatch, that everything is just fine. And there we see Wendy Lawrence entering the through the hatch and onto the middeck to take her seat between Charlie and Andy. You can see the straps hanging down, George. Those straps are used as assist handles to get in and out of the seat. You know, the vehicle's in the vertical here. The crew enters and then has to lay on their backs for launch. Crew, I spoke to each one of them this morning, are extremely focused on the work that they have to get done. The flight plan is very full. They have very little time for free time, so they're focused on getting their job done. Now we see Suichi entering his seat. This is a really good view from the glare shield between the commander and pilot looking aft into the vehicle. And we see Suichi in the MS-1 seat, and the two closeout crew members there. We've got George and Lee.
OTC, MS4, contract.
S4, this is OTC. I have you loud and clear. Good morning, Wendy.
Good morning, Mark.
See Steve Robinson entering the crew module, and Wendy, we hear Wendy Lawrence doing her communications checks.
OVCC. VCC, OTC. MS2 on board at this time, and that is all crew members on board at this time. 1208, thank you.
And Houston, the crew is configured for the simul voice check.
Okay, Discovery, Houston, for the entire crew, comm check.
CDR, loud and clear.
PLP. MS1. MS2. MS3.
MS4.
MS5.
And Discovery, Houston, we have you all loud and clear. this completes the air-to-ground voice checks. Thanks. A couple of additional notes for you.
The countdown will resume once again at 9:34 a.m.
Transition to
During this period, the NASA test director will ask members of the launch team to verify that the proper software has been loaded aboard for the remainder of the countdown. Also during this hold, we'll get a verification that the pre-flight inertial measurement unit alignment has been completed. At T-minus 20 minutes and holding, this is shuttle launch control.
Right now, and we anticipate.
Thank you, Bill. Range weather.
Weather has no constraints for launch.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Ops manager.
The mission management team is working no problems. We are go for launch.
Thank you, sir. Discovery launch director.
Discovery, sir, go ahead.
Okay, Eileen, our long wait may be over. And so on behalf of the many millions of people who believe so deeply in what we do, good luck, Godspeed, and have a little fun up there.
Well, thanks to you, to the launch team, and to everybody in the shuttle program. The crew is go for launch.
Copy that, thank you. NTD, you are clear to proceed with this launch.
Copy, thank you.
Standing by for retraction of the crew orbiter access arm.
CLS is go for orbiter access arm retract.
Discovery OTC, it's time for you to return to flight. Our hopes and prayers ride with you. Godspeed, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
And OTC Discovery, thank you very much.
That was orbiter test conductor Mark Taffet here in firing room 3. The rotating service structure can be moved back into position very quickly if there's an emergency in about 28 seconds.
JRPS OTC, start your recorders, please. PLT OTC, perform APU pre-start.
Auxiliary power unit pre-start procedure now being performed by pilot Jim Kelly, and he will actually start those at T-minus 5 minutes and counting by flipping switches in the cockpit.
CLS is go for PERT sequence 4.
T-minus 4 minutes and counting. Main engine gimbal check, steering check coming up. And now we should have retraction of the gaseous oxygen vent arm, the box vent arm. We'll pull away from the top of the external tank, the beanie cap so-called.
Discovery OTC, close and lock your visors and initiate O2 flow.
T-minus 2 minutes.
Visors on, O2 flows and work.
CLS is go for ET LH2 pressurization.
External tank bipod heaters now being deactivated.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
Firing chain is armed.
20.
Sound suppressor water system is being activated.
15.
Range systems armed. T-minus 10 seconds. Go for main engine start. 7, 6, 5. 3 engines up and burning. 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, beginning America's new journey to the moon, Mars, and beyond. And the vehicle has cleared the tower.
Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Houston's now controlling. Commander Eileen Collins confirming Discovery's rolling onto a course for rendezvous with the International Space Station. Seconds since launch, Discovery's already traveling 400 miles per hour. Altitude 12,000 feet. This is a view from a camera mounted on Discovery's external fuel tank. 3 engines on Discovery are now throttling down to 2/3 throttle to prepare the spacecraft to pass through the area of maximum air pressure and go supersonic. minutes since launch. Discovery speed now 900 miles per hour.
Discovery Houston, go at throttle up.
Discovery, just go with throttle.
All systems remain go for Discovery. Altitude now 9 miles, 6 miles northeast of the launch pad. One and a half minutes since launch, Discovery's already consumed more than 2.25 million pounds of propellant. It weighs less than half of what it did at liftoff. Speed now 2,000 miles per hour. Altitude 18 miles, 14 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. Standing by now for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rockets. Booster officer confirms clean separation of the solid rocket boosters. Discovery now on its 3 main engines, second stage. Speed now 3,030 miles per hour. Altitude 33 miles, 40 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Discovery's orbital maneuvering system engines are now firing to assist its climb to orbit. They'll fire for about 2 minutes and 19 seconds. This again a view from the camera on the external fuel tank for Discovery.
Discovery Houston, 2-engine Zaragoza.
Discovery is 2-engine Zaragoza.
That call that Discovery could perform a transatlantic landing at a Spanish Air Force base in Zaragoza, Spain if required. 3 engines continue to operate well. All systems in good condition. Altitude now 254,000 feet or about 48 miles. Discovery speed 4,500 miles per hour. 85 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. About 5 minutes left until cutoff of Discovery's 3 main engines. Discovery's altitude now 59 miles. Speed 5,500 miles per hour.
Discovery Houston, negative return.
Discovery is negative return.
That call confirming Discovery's gained too much speed and altitude to return to a landing at the Kennedy Space Center if that were required. All systems remain go for Discovery. Just over 4 minutes to cut off of the main engines. During that time, Discovery will more than triple its current speed to reach the 17,400 miles per hour required to achieve Earth orbit. Discovery 200 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center now. Altitude 65 miles, speed 6,700 miles per hour.
Discovery Houston, press to ATO.
Discovery is pressed to ATO.
That call indicating Discovery could reach a lower than planned but safe orbit on only 2 engines if needed. All 3 engines continue to operate well at full throttle. Speed now 8,000 miles per hour. Altitude 67 miles, 300 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center.
Discovery Houston, single engine Ops 3.
Discovery is single engine Ops 3.
Discovery can perform a transatlantic landing on only 1 engine if required. All continuing to go well. Altitude 67 miles, 350 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. Discovery speed now 9,200 miles per hour. Discovery is rolling to a heads-up position now to assist its performance as it finishes its ascent to orbit.
Discovery Houston, press to MECO and single-engine Zaragoza 104.
Press to MECO and single-engine Zaragoza 104.
Those calls that Discovery could reach its planned orbit on only 2 engines if needed. All 3 continue to operate well at full throttle. Just under 2 minutes to cut off of the main engines now.
Discovery Houston, we see a nominal shutdown plan. You will be go for the plus X and go for the pitch maneuver.
Nominal shutdown plan, go for the plus X and go for the pitch maneuver.
Good copy.
About a minute and a half to cut off of the main engines. Those calls confirming that the crew is go to do a plus X maneuver after jettison of the external tank to clear.
Discovery Houston, single engine press 104.
Single engine press 104.
Plus X maneuver to clear the tank, and also then a pitch maneuver that will provide handheld photography by the crew through the windows of the vehicle of the external tank after it's jettisoned. 1 minute to cut off of the main engines now. Discovery's speed 13,300 miles per hour, altitude 65 miles, 615 miles from the Kennedy Space Center. Discovery's 3 engines are now beginning to throttle back to prevent the spacecraft from experiencing forces in excess of 3 times that of Earth's gravity as it continues to accelerate. Speed now 14,800 miles per hour, altitude 63 miles, 700 miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. 30 seconds to cut off of the main engines. Discovery speed now 16,000 miles per hour. Standing by for cutoff Discovery's 3 main engines. Booster officer confirms main engine cutoff for Discovery. Standing by now for jettison of the external fuel tank. Live television as Discovery jettisons external fuel tank. All normal with the cutoff of Discovery's main engines. Discovery performing a maneuver to fire its jets and ensure clean separation from the tank.
Discovery, we have a good plus X maneuver.
Copy the good plus X. We saw a nominal MECO. Ohms 1 is not required.
Nominal MECO, ohms 1 not required.
And this is the
Let's go for main engine start.
After many, many years of work, we got Discovery. A lot of tears in people's eyes when we finally lifted off. We cleared the tower going better than accelerating through 100 miles an hour.
Houston, Discovery, roll program.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
A view of the crew in the upper left in the flight deck. We had a camera on our external tank. This is the LOX feed line. You see the ET over to the right, the booster on the left. The purpose of this camera was to watch any debris that might fall off. We've got the booster separation here. The cameras on the boosters actually follow them down to the ocean. And as you know, they're retrieved and reused. Back to the LOX feed line camera. First time we've flown a camera in this position, it worked quite well. Here's the roll to heads up. You can see the horizon in the background. That was about 6 minutes in the flight. Here we are about 8 minutes and 20 seconds. We have main engine cutoff. And shortly after that, you see the forward attach point. We're going to separate from the tank. The tank is going to fall away. And we will pitch around.
Houston, Discovery, we have a good plus X maneuver.
We'll pitch around and photograph the tank.
Okay, well, we have a short statement for return to flight. And the return to flight teams and the shuttle program that we'd like to read.
Eileen, everybody's listening and we'd love to hear your statement.
Thank you, Julie. On the evening of our first day in space, aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery, the STS-114 crew would like to send our thanks to the teams who've worked so hard over the past 2.5 years to return the fleet to orbit. Our thanks go out to all the managers, the engineers, the technicians, and everyone. Give yourself a pat on the back. This is work well done. As our crew looks back at our beautiful planet and then outward towards the unknown of space, we feel the importance, today more than any time, of space exploration to all those who are living on Earth. Our flight is the next flight of many in the human exploration of the universe. And finally, we reflect on the last shuttle mission. The great ship Columbia and her inspiring crew, Rick, Willie, Mike, Casey, Dave, Laurel, and Elon. We miss them, and we are continuing their mission. God bless them tonight, and God bless their families. Good night.
Thank you, Eileen, and the STS-114 crew. We miss them too.
This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to watch a sequential still video now looking at where the Space Shuttle's robotic arm latches into the sill of Discovery's payload bay. Mission Specialist Andy Thomas and Charlie Camarda are already underway with powering up that system and moving through the final checkout procedure of the RMS, as it's called, Remote Manipulator System.
As you look at this sequential still video through the orbiter's S-band communication system, right around the middle of your picture, there's the grapple fixture for the external stowage platform. That's a large tool storage platform that will be attached to the Quest airlock of the International Space Station on the third and final spacewalk of the mission, to be conducted by Soichi Noguchi and Steve Robinson. Behind that, the barrel-shaped object is the Raffaello multi-purpose logistics module, the cargo module near the rear of the payload bay, that is equipped with about 15 tons of food and water and supplies, as well as experiment hardware for the crew on board the International Space Station, Commander Sergei Krikalev and NASA flight engineer and science officer John Phillips, who are tidying up the station today in preparation for the arrival of their first visitors, since they themselves arrived on the International Space Station back in mid-April. Once the shuttle's robotic arm grapples and unberths the orbiter boom sensor system and brings it to what is known as a high hover position over the payload bay, then the shuttle's Ku-band communications antenna will be unfurled. Typically, that antenna, which provides high data rate telemetry and television from the shuttle, is deployed on the first day of the mission right after launch. But because of some concerns over possible clearance and interference issues, very tight clearances between the end of the boom itself and the Ku-band antenna, flight controllers and mission managers crafted a flight plan to play it safe very conservatively, to get the boom out of the way first before the Ku-band antenna would be deployed. Once it is deployed and we have a high data rate telemetry capability, the imagery that was taken from the external tank umbilical well cameras in the belly of the orbiter yesterday following launch, following the external tank jettisoning and separation by the orbiter from the tank, that imagery will then be downlinked as another set of images for the imagery assessment team to analyze in its ongoing deliberations for the mission management team. The robotics officer here in the shuttle flight control room reports that mission specialist Andy Thomas is now poised directly above the electrical flight grapple fixture at the end of the orbiter boom sensor system on the starboard sill of Discovery's payload bay, and we're standing by for the actual motion of the end effector to reach out and grab that grapple fixture in the first step on the road to unberthing the boom and creating a 100-foot-long crane.
Houston Discovery for PDRS, no need to respond. We're going in for the grapple.
It has now been grappled, 2:25 a.m. Central Time. the robotics officer here in the shuttle flight control room reporting a good grapple. So we now have a hard fix between the end effector on the shuttle's robotic arm with the 50-foot-long boom extension. And there's our first television views of this mission through the KU-band communications antenna. This view from the camera at the rear of Discovery's cargo bay, looking to the forward portion of the cargo bay, you're looking at the Raffaello multi-purpose logistics module on the lower left-hand portion of your screen. The shuttle's robotic arm grappled onto the orbiter boom sensor system hovering over the starboard sill of the payload bay. The survey of the starboard wing leading edge panels of Discovery has now gotten underway. The crew deciding for conservation of time to begin with panel number 1, which is the inboard panel along the fuselage, and then move outboard toward the end of the wing.
Discovery Houston for...
Houston Discovery for LDRI.
Go ahead, Vegas.
Yeah, just to let you know, as expected, the LDRI lasing the wing gave a great illuminator for the RSC camera.
That's great to hear. Thanks for those words. Discovery Houston, we show you in attitude. You can pick up with the shoulder yaw in step 3 of the single joint. Once you're in position, you can go back and pick up step 2 to do the RCS actions if you'd like.
This is Mission Control Houston, an impressive view of the aft portion of the shuttle Discovery, looking out over the starboard wing, now directly over the vertical tail fin and the orbiter maneuvering system pods. About at the middle of your picture, that dark circular object is control moment gyroscope. That will replace the failed control moment gyroscope in the Z-1 truss of the International Space Station during the second of the 3 spacewalks by Soichi Noguchi and Steve Robinson. This is Mission Control Houston. 21 hours, 43 minutes into the flight of Discovery. The shuttle passing off the southwestern coast of Australia, about to begin a swing over the southern Pacific Ocean in pursuit of the International Space Station on this day of inspection of the orbiter's wings and its nose through the use, for the first time ever, of an orbiter boom sensor system, a 50-foot-long boom extension affixed to the by a grapple fixture to the shuttle's robotic arm to form a 100-foot-long crane that is being used to analyze the reinforced carbon-carbon on the leading edges of the 22 panels comprising the 2 wings, 22 panels for each of the wings of the orbiter, and the reinforced carbon-carbon on the nose. At 4:45 this morning, Andy Thomas, along with Charlie Camarda and Jim Kelly, began the inspection of the starboard wing leading edge panels, all 22 panels. And then, with that having been completed, an hour and 45 minutes later, recalibrated the sensors and now began the inspection of the nose cap that got underway about 15 minutes ago at 7:06 a.m. Central Time. Directly in front of the orbiter, taking a self-portrait of the nose of the shuttle Discovery as it moves in a zigzag position to cover all of the pertinent areas of interest, ensuring that the nose incurred no damage during Discovery's 8.5-minute climb to orbit yesterday.
Mission Specialist Charlie Camarda and Andy Thomas indicating that that's them. You can see waving to the cameras on the Space Shuttle Discovery's robotic arm as they control the robotic arm through a survey of the crew cabin. Again, this is another leg of the inspections that are taking a look at the condition of the heat protection systems on board the Shuttle Discovery following yesterday's 9:39 a.m. Central Time launch and climb into orbit.
Okay, here we go then.
With that, Orbit 2 Flight Director Tony Sacacci and Spacecraft Communicator Julie Payette giving Andy Thomas and company the go-ahead to begin the survey of the crew cabin, even though they don't have a tape in the deck on board.
For the DTV.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to catch up, the error message we have, it's the C column 32, I believe it's message 32, and I looking at the page 12-17 on the photo TV checklist. And we managed to get the jump tape out, but the error message still exists after the power cycle.
So ET, we copy that. Let us look at it.
The end effector camera taking a look at the forward section of the thermal protection system near the reaction control system jets at the forward section of the crew cabin, moving back along the starboard side of the crew cabin. The previous view was from the elbow camera on the arm, looking down at the aft flight deck windows that are the overhead windows.
Hey, just one last check as we close out the procedure. On step 93, can you confirm that the circuit breakers are main Charlie circuit breakers, step 93?
Okay, yeah, that was my bad. Actually, I want to close the main Charlie at this time.
And you can open the main Bravo circuit breakers.
Houston Discovery for PDR. So you're going to have any more operations for us tonight? We're at the pre-cradle position.
Andy, we concur, and let me tell you that everybody here is very impressed and very appreciative of the absolutely awesome work you and Charlie have done today with the arm. It's been very nicely done, and you guys are in a good config for rendezvous tomorrow. So no, you're done. Again, beautiful job.
This begins the rendezvous and docking day for Discovery's astronauts. They'll be the first visitors to arrive on a space shuttle at the International Space Station in over 2 years. Discovery is scheduled to catch up and dock to the station at 6:18 a.m. Central Time Thursday.
Again, this is video that was taken by Soichi Noguchi from the flight deck of Discovery moments after orbital insertion, shortly after Discovery was launched on Tuesday from the Kennedy Space Center.
Discovery Houston, we show a good burn, no further trim required.
Discovery Station, hold duty.
Hello, Sergey. This is Space Shuttle Discovery on the Big Loop. We hear you loud and clear. How are?
Not very loud, but very clear. Glad to hear you. We're waiting for you.
Okay, glad to hear you too. We understand that you will not be answering calls when you're in the service module, but we will still be planning on giving you the status calls of where we are.
Okay, thanks.
Discovery now being manually flown from the aft flight deck by Commander Eileen Collins. Range is 950 feet, closing at a rate of 1.5 feet per second.
Houston, Alpha, Discovery, RPM start in 2, 1, now.
Sergey, RPM start now.
The rendezvous pitch maneuver is underway, having begun at 5:15 a.m. Central Time.
And Sergey, the orbiter's through about 4 or 5 degrees of pitch now. The orbiter's through about 4 or 5
standing by for the command to initiate photography.
Houston Discovery, Underground 2 and 3 drift.
We see it. Sergey, about 55 degrees more pitch to go before we give you the start photo call.
Okay.
Synchronized spaceflight at an altitude of 222 statute miles over Europe as Discovery continues the rendezvous pitch maneuver. The station crew standing by for the initiation of rendezvous pitch maneuver photography.
Alpha Discovery, about 20 seconds to photo start.
Sergey, about 10 more seconds. We'll have you start clicking your photos.
Okay. Alpha Discovery, start photos.
Start photos, Sergey. Start photos, Sergey.
Photography has begun aboard the International Space Station, looking out of windows in the Zvezda service module. Sergei Krikalev manning a digital camera with 800mm lens. John Phillips with a 400mm lens. As the rendezvous pitch maneuver continues.
Coming through a pitch of about 180, another 15 degrees to go. Another 15 to go.
Alpha Discovery, end photos.
And with that direction by pilot Jim Kelly, about a minute and 40 seconds worth of photography accomplished by Krikalev and Phillips.
Continue to click, and we'll get the aft end here in a minute.
Okay. Okay.
Of course, the station crew free to continue photography as it desires, but the prime areas of interest resulted in about 1 minute and 40 seconds worth of usable photography.
Houston, are you receiving the view of the station rising?
Discovery, we are. It's a beauty.
Discovery Houston on the big loop. Wanted to let you know you are go to proceed inside 170 feet, and you are go for docking.
Houston Discovery on the big loop. We copy the go inside 170 feet and go for docking. Docking mechanism power up and docking prep are complete. Airlock fan activation, LES volume prep is in work. We'll call it down in just a minute.
This view through the shuttle's S-band communication system called sequential still video, video that basically refreshes itself every few seconds, showing a pressurized mating adapter number 2 out of a centerline camera mounted in the orbiter docking system. That is the forward docking port on the Destiny laboratory of the complex, to which Discovery will link up about 24 minutes or so from now. This view again from station television cameras showing a Discovery and its payload bay lights illuminated. In the orbiter docking system, the forward nose jets firing as Eileen Collins continues her methodical approach at a rate of about 1/10 of a foot per second, now just 78 feet separating the two spacecraft. She is in the corridor, maintaining a 5-degree deadband correlation between the outer bands of that corridor, maintaining that precise alignment between the two docking mechanisms. Contact and capture expected about 13 minutes or so from now. We should be getting downlink television from the Shuttle Discovery momentarily, and there it is, looking right down the eye of the docking port on the forward end of the Destiny laboratory, and the standoff cross target.
No need to respond. We'll be coming on board for flight deck video.
Commander Eileen Collins at the aft flight deck of Discovery, flying the final few feet just prior to docking.
This is Mission Control Houston. Additional downlink videotape from Shuttle Discovery. This view from the centerline camera of the orbiter docking system as the final approach was being made to the International Space Station.
The Space Shuttle Flight Control Room reports a perfect approach by Commander Eileen Collins.
2.5 minutes to contact.
Houston Alpha Discovery, we have contact free drift.
Docking confirmed.
Free drift.
A space shuttle has returned to the International Space Station for the first time since November 25, 2002. This view now from payload bay cameras showing the shuttle and the station locked up at the docking interface between the orbiter docking system and the pressurized mating adapter number 2, the forward docking port on the Destiny laboratory. You can see the ring continuing to drive. That will form a hard mate between the two vehicles, after which the two crews on either side of the docking interface will begin about an hour and a half worth of leak checks prior to the pressurization of the small passageway between the two docking ports and the ability for the two crews to open hatches and greet one another.
This is Mission Control Houston. Again, these are pre-recorded views from inside the Space Shuttle Discovery as here Commander Eileen Collins prepares to open the hatch into the International Space Station following today's 6:18 a.m. Central Time docking. Shaking hands with International Space Station Expedition 11 Commander Sergei Krikalev and entering the station. Collins being greeted by John Phillips of the Expedition 11 crew and entering the Destiny Laboratory module.
Discovery's crew now aboard the Destiny laboratory. Eileen Collins was first in, followed by Soichi Noguchi. Steve Robinson now aboard. Charlie Camarda now joining his crewmates.
Discovery arriving.
John Phillips, former naval officer, with the now famous tradition of ringing on board the visiting crew of Discovery. Andy Thomas now on board the International Space Station for the second time.
Captain, United States Navy arriving.
That for Wendy Lawrence.